Welcome, everyone. It is good to be here with you all today. We'll give everyone just maybe 30 more seconds to get into the call and start their video. Alrighty, well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it, and then we might have a few more folks join us. But my name is Leela Oakley, and I'm the Outreach and Engagement Associate for JustFaith Ministries. I recognize many of your names and have spoken with and emailed with many of you, so it's good to have you here with me today. Right now, you are all muted. You do have the ability to unmute yourself. So if there's a time where you need to unmute yourself to ask a question, feel free to do that, but just ask that you keep yourself muted while I'm presenting, and that will just keep from any outside noise interrupting my presentation. And what I'm going to do is, in a moment, I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you all and walk through a variety of different aspects of Zoom, and then there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. It's most helpful to just save your questions till the end. So if you think of something, write it down, and then we'll get to all those questions at the end. I also want to let you know that I am recording my presentation, and will send the presentation recording as well as the slides that I'm using to you in the email. So please take notes as it's helpful, but don't feel like you've got to frantically write down every single thing, because I will send you both of those pieces of material. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which we will be talking about in a moment. Welcome to the JustFaith Ministries Zoom training. Here's just a quick agenda for the different things we're going to be looking at today. And we'll be discussing a few more things in this, but we're going to review settings. We're then going to review Zoom security, how to schedule a meeting, how to make a participant a co-host, screen sharing, breakout rooms, and then again, time for the Q&A. And what I've done today is I've created an agenda that targets all of the key functions in Zoom that you would actually use in a JustFaith Ministry small group. So Zoom has a ton of more capabilities than you're going to ever need to know for our small group. So I've tried to zero in on the things that are most essential, and that's what we'll be focusing on today. All right. So here's what the host screen looks like. I wanted to let you know I'm using some visuals that are provided by Zoom on their different trainings. So for example, this image comes from Zoom. And this is what we call the host screen, which is me as the host of this call, what I look at on my screen when I'm not sharing my screen. And I see all of the participants, their images, if they're sharing their video, or a screensaver possibly. I then have what we call a toolbar. Now this toolbar on laptops and computers typically is at the bottom. Sometimes it's at the top, or if you're on an iPad, you might have to tap the screen to locate the toolbar, but that when I refer to the toolbar, this is what I mean. On the toolbar, you have a mute button where you can mute your audio. You have the stop and start video, all of those things, those two things you have as a participant as well. And then as a host, you have a few other functions that the participants do not have. I know this is very small, this is small writing right here, so we don't need to really pay attention to what's on that toolbar yet. I just want you to know that that's exactly what I'm referring to when I refer to the toolbar. The last thing I want to draw your attention to on this page is right here. For those of you who may not be able to read it, it says speaker view. There's also an option for gallery view. Now, when it says speaker view up there, that means that you are currently in gallery view. So the button is telling you what you can choose instead. And what I like to do in a JustFaith Ministry small group is keep it on gallery view, where I get to see all of the faces of the folks in my small group. For me, that helps me feel more connected, almost as if we were in the same room in a circle together, where I can see everyone as well as the person who's sharing. Other folks like to focus just on the person who's speaking at the moment. So they might choose a speaker view. So instead of seeing all of these faces, we would just see, I think her name's Farah. She would be very large on the screen, and then we'd have other folks down below. So that's a personal preference for you all, but I just want to tell you that is where you will find that button to change the display setting. Now we're going to look into Zoom settings for a moment, and these are pretty important. The Zoom settings can be set on the Zoom webpage. So what you do is you go to zoom.us, you sign into your online account, and then on the left-hand side, you will see once you've logged into your account, there's meetings, there's settings, there's recordings, and a couple other tabs in that column on the left-hand side. You click settings, and from there, it will give you a list of about 50 different settings that you can adjust for all of your Zoom calls. I've highlighted a few settings that matter for JustFaith Ministries, but again, there are about 50 of them. So you'll want to just scan through and see if there's any that you prefer based on just personal preference. The first thing we recommend is that you turn off the join before host. So what I don't want to happen to you all is if you're starting a JustFaith Ministries small group call and you allow participants to join before you, then you can have people in your groups joining the call and they could be waiting and trying to figure out what to do, and you're not there yet, and you're not prepared for them to join. So turn that off. I also recommend you turn on the waiting room, which for those of you who got on the call a couple minutes early, I know Ken, you're on a few minutes early, you are in what's called the waiting room, which is just like you'd find in a doctor's office. You're in a virtual holdout space. And by having the waiting room on as a facilitator, all of your participants can get on the call a few minutes early, make sure they're set up in their homes for the call. And it gives you a moment to prepare. And then once you're fully prepared, to let everyone in and be able to greet them and welcome them without being frantically running around trying to get a glass of water or whatever you need to do before the call. Also recommend you mute participants upon entry. That allows them to unmute when they're able and ready to do that. For the chat setting, you have the option to set the chat between the host or between everyone. And for JustFaith Ministries small groups, I recommend opening the chat to everyone. If you were to go to the chat today on your toolbar, you would see that you're only allowed to chat with me. And that's because I've decided I don't want you all to be able to send a chat to everyone. And some of that's just a security measure, but for your small groups where you know exactly who's going to be on the call, you know who they're going to be, having it where everyone can chat with each other can be helpful. You want to turn on the co-host, and I'll speak to that later. You want to turn on the breakout rooms. I'll speak to that later. And you want to turn on show a join from your browser link. And what that does is allows people without an account to just click the link and log straight on. And that's the phrase that they use. So you'll want to turn that on. You want to turn on screen share. And you can choose between host only or participants. For JustFaith Ministries programs, really the host only needs to share their screen. But if you want to open it up so that if a participant has something they'd like to share with the group, they can, then go ahead and turn that function on. And then finally, allow participants to rename themselves. Oftentimes, if they're sharing a computer with a spouse or a partner, the name might not be the correct name, and that way they can change their name to represent who they are. And now, how to keep Zoom secure. So I'm sure some of you have heard about some of the issues that Zoom had early on in keeping spaces secure, and they've institutionalized a few required functions. The first is a password on all meetings. You can't schedule a meeting without a password anymore, and that just makes the link more unique and more challenging to break into. The waiting room that we talked about, that is now required by Zoom, is also helpful for JustFaith Ministry small groups, so that will be automatically on. We recommend a password for those joining by phone. It's just another added measure of security. And then we recommend that you turn off the following. Private chat, so that's where I could send, someone who's not a host could send an individual chat to another person. And the reason why I recommend you turn it off for JustFaith Ministry small groups is not as much about security, but it allows, it forces everyone to stay completely engaged and not to enter into any side conversation. So one of you might be really interested in sharing a quick note about something totally irrelevant to our training today with each other. So Patricia might want to send Maggie a reminder about the lunch date they have in 2 weeks. Well, that's, if you're in the midst of a small group discussion and you choose to take that time to send an individual message, that's just distracting from the time together. So it's not as much a security reason, but more of it helps people stay focused reason. Turn off the file transfer. There's no reason for you to send a file through the chat, and so that keeps someone from sending an inappropriate file through the chat. Turn off the annotation and whiteboard. Those are just functions you don't need in our small group calls and can add confusion. And then allowing removed participants to rejoin. So what that does is if someone does join your call who is not expected, and plans to join to be disruptive and is a bad faith actor, let's say, you can remove them and then they can't rejoin. So if I don't have that checked, then someone can join right now, cause a disruption. I could kick them out, but they'd be allowed to rejoin. And so that just is an extra measure of security. All righty, now how to schedule a meeting. So again, just like when you were adjusting the settings, you're going to go to the Zoom webpage, zoom.us, and then you're going to sign in with your username and password. You're going to select the meeting tab, which is on the left-hand side. I think it's right above settings or right below. And then you're going to click on schedule a new meeting. And when you click schedule a new meeting, a box will pop up with all these different fields that you can fill in, like time, date, settings, name. And what you're going to do is fill that in according to your small group's information. So let's say you're meeting on Monday evenings from 6 to 8. You are going to call it your Faith and Racial Equity small group. That's going to be the name of the small group. And then what you're going to want to do is schedule it as a recurring meeting. So what this does is it allows you to set the meeting once and it stay the exact same for all 8 to 10 weeks that you're meeting together. So when you click a button that says select as a recurring meeting, it will say it will ask you how many times that you want to repeat this meeting. And you'll say 8 or 10 times, depending on how many times you're going to be meeting together. And that keeps the login information the same for participants every week and facilitators. And then it keeps you as the host from having to go in and reschedule every single week. And then to send that information to your group, the login information, there's a button where you can send it directly via Gmail or Outlook, but probably most of your group doesn't have the same email provider. So what I recommend is you just copy the invitation and paste it into an email and send it to the small group that way. All righty. Now, how to admit participants. So at this point, what you've done is you've adjusted this, you've created a Zoom account, you've adjusted the settings, you have scheduled the meetings, and you are ready to start your first small group meeting. When you start the call as a host and you have a waiting room, what you'll see on your toolbar is a button, and I'm sorry, this is unclear. It says manage participants. And as folks are joining, you'll see it pop up and say, so-and-so has entered the waiting room. So Lisa has entered the waiting room. Bob has entered the waiting room. And I'm not going to admit them until I'm ready as a host. So I would let them gather in the waiting room. And then at whatever point I'm ready to admit them to the call, I will click manage participants and I would either admit them individually, or I could go up to the top right corner and there's a blue admit all button. Again, these are the two things that would pop up when you click manage participants and see waiting room. What I recommend is to start the call as the host, to admit individually your co-facilitators. So you have first on the call the team of co-facilitators, whether that's 2 people or 3. Once the 2 or 3 of you are ready, then you can go to manage participants, see waiting room, and then admit the rest of the folks who are waiting in the waiting room. Something else you're going to want to do is to you're going to want to give your co-facilitators co-host status. So as the host of the call, you'll start the call, admit the co-facilitators early, and then you're going to want to make them a co-host. So in order to do that is when you're on that display screen that I showed you at the very beginning, so you'll see the faces of your 1 or 2 other co-hosts, you'll hover the mouse over their face, and in the top right-hand corner of their face, there's 3 dots. When you click those 3 dots, this is what will pop up. You could send them a chat, stop their video, make them a host, and you're going to want to make them a co-host. So it's as simple as clicking make co-host. And then what that does is it gives your co-facilitators all of the same functions that you have as the host during the call. So they can share their screen. They can mute other participants. They can have just as much control over the call as you do, which helps when you're sharing that technological responsibility with each other. Now, screen share. So screen share is one of the main functions that you're going to use in a JustFaith Ministries session. So this is going to be used to share videos, to share documents or prayers. And so how you go about screen sharing is, first, as a reminder, you have to have turned screen share on in your settings. And then once you're in the call, is you'll find share screen in your toolbar. Now this, again, I know this is small and kind of hard to see, but the toolbar again will either be at the top of your screen or at the bottom. And it's always a green box with a little arrow. And so you'll click share screen. When you click share screen, you will see this pop up on your screen. And you have the option to share screen 1, screen 2, whiteboard, iPad. The whiteboard wouldn't be there if you turn that off in your settings, but you'll see all of the different applications that are on your computer open with the option to share them. So let me pause there to say that when you are about to facilitate a session and you know that you need to share one PDF that has, that's the prayer. Let's say you're sharing the prayer for that week and you have one video you need to show. What I recommend is that you close all other applications on your computer, except for those two. So you have those pulled up and minimized on your desktop or your laptop, so that when you go to share your screen, those will be the two screens that are available to share. So since you're sharing the prayer first, let's say the prayer was right here on screen 1. It's not, but let's pretend it is. We would click that screen, press share, and you would begin to be able to see, as my participants, the prayer for that week. When you're done sharing a screen, I'll show you on the next page, but all you have to do is click stop share, which is a little box at the top of the screen, but I'll show you that in a moment. Now you've shared the prayer, you've stopped sharing the prayer, you've gone on with conversation, and it gets to the point in the session where you're going to be sharing a video. To share a video, you do the exact same thing. You go to share screen, this pops up, and in screen 2, let's pretend we have Safari open with the YouTube video. And so you would click that screen, and then this is the crucial detail. To share a video, you need to click share computer sound, and you need to click optimize for full screen clip. What that does is it allows for everyone else to hear the audio from the video and to be able to see it as a full video clip. So again, if you're going to be sharing a video through share screen, you need to click both of those buttons before you click the blue share button. Now, to access your toolbar when you're sharing a screen, if you've ever tried to share your screen before, you know that it changes the display screen for the host. So you no longer see everyone's faces. You're seeing the screen you share with a little toolbar drop down of everyone's faces. And then the meeting control toolbar is actually up at the very top, and it can be moved around. I'd like to keep mine up at the top, but you can drag it around. You just click over it and then drag it around. And up there is exactly where I was saying you'll see the stop share button, which you'll click, and then you'll be done sharing your screen. So again, to review, you go to share screen, you click the document or video you want to share, optimize for sound and video if you need to, click the blue share button. When you're done sharing, you go to your toolbar at the top and you click the red stop share button. Alrighty, breakout rooms. So apart from screen share, breakout rooms is probably the next best function that you're going to get to use through Zoom. And what this does is it allows you to break into smaller groups for discussion and conversation. And in the same way, if you were meeting in person, you would have a central Sunday school classroom maybe, or someone's living room that you're meeting in, and then you'd break into corners for smaller group discussion. This allows you to do that virtually. So the first thing you have to do is to enable the breakout rooms in your settings. Again, that was on the list of settings to turn on. And then in the settings, you are able to pre-assign breakout rooms, but that only works if all participants have a Zoom account. And so I don't really encourage folks to try and pre-assign breakout rooms before a session. I just wanted to let you know that because I do get emails from folks saying, I've been searching for hours on how to pre-assign my rooms and I just can't. And the reason you can't is because your participants don't all have a Zoom account. And most likely that will be the case for your small group. So I would just recommend to not worry about pre-assigning and to assign the breakout rooms in the session. When folks are in their breakout rooms, they're able to share audio, video, screen share. They're able to have small group conversation with each other. And then another thing that's important to note before I show you actually how to use the breakout rooms is that the breakout rooms will only appear on the co-host and host toolbar. So as a participant in this call, you could not start a breakout room, but I as a host could, or another co-host could start the call. So now actually how to use the breakout rooms. What you'll do is you'll click breakout rooms, which is in the toolbar. Again, that's that black toolbar that's on the top or the bottom. So you'll select breakout rooms. When you do that, you have a pop-up window that looks just like this appear. And what you can do is assign, in this call that I use this graphic, there's only one participant, so we can only assign them to one room. But you would see, let's say 12, because that's the number of folks in your small group. Assign 12 participants into however many rooms you've decided to make the small group. So let's say you want 4 rooms of 30. So you'd move this arrow up until, oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally clicked it. You would move the arrow up until it said 4 rooms, and then that would put 3 participants in each room. And I'm going to say automatically generate these small groups. And the reason I as a facilitator opt for automatic generation is that because it takes my control out of it, and then I don't have to take the time to manually do it. And what I mean by that is these small groups are a great opportunity these breakout rooms are a great opportunity for various small groups to get to know each other on a deeper level because they're connecting in a smaller group. And so as a facilitator, I kind of like to rely on this automated process to generate these groups because it keeps me from putting the same people in the small groups each week, or from sort of using my bias or judgment to decide who's best to go with who. That really, it lets the computer randomly generate it, and that allows for different people to connect with different people every single time they break into small groups. With that being said, you can manually select it and actually do create the groups yourself. If you go, one more thing. So once you've selected all your different options, you'll click the blue Create Rooms button. When you do that, this pop-up will appear. And you'll see in breakout room 1, the participants who've been assigned randomly to breakout room 1. You'll see in breakout room 2, the participants who've randomly been assigned to breakout room 2. Here we only have Aaron and Jack, so just one participant in each group. If you do the random generating of the breakout rooms, and you get to this pop-up screen where you actually see the rooms and you realize that there are 2 folks who do not connect in one group, and you think that it's really would be advantageous to move one of them to another group, you can manually do this at this point. So you would click the button right here where it says Move to Breakout Room 2. And then I can do the exact same thing for Jack. So I'd hover over Jack, and I would be able to then click Move to Breakout Room 1. So if you needed to pay attention to a particular dynamic in your small group, you could do that and swap the participants manually. Once you've done that, when you're confident in your breakout rooms and how it's divided the folks, what you'll do is you'll click Open All Rooms, and participants will be invited to join their room. All they have to do as a participant is click the Join Room when it pops up on their screen. They don't have to open a new window or do anything. It will automatically take them to the room they need to go to. Once the breakout rooms have started and the assigned participants have been asked to join their big breakout rooms, the host will be in the main meeting until they join a session manually. So let's say today I decided to send you all to 2 breakout rooms. I would go through that process of setting up the rooms. I would click, start breakout rooms. You all would disappear and I'd be left in the main room by myself. As a facilitator of JustFaith Ministries program, we want you to be active participants. So what we recommend is that as a host, You invite people to the rooms, you send them there, and then you actually join a room yourself for the dialogue and conversation. So what we don't want is you're stuck in the main room by yourself for 20 minutes, not being able to engage in that dialogue. So to join a room, this is the screen that you would see once you sent folks to the breakout room. You'll see a blue join button over every breakout room. So whatever room you think it's appropriate for you to join, you would click join the blue breakout room and it would automatically send you to that room. If you would like to broadcast a message to all the folks in their breakout room, say you forgot a question that they needed to consider, or you wanted to give them a warning or a time warning, you could broadcast a message to all of them and it would appear on their screen for about 10 seconds and then disappear. So that's a way to get them some information if you need to. And then you have the ability to close all of the rooms. So to close the rooms, you just click this close all rooms red button, and it actually gives the small groups a 1-minute warning. So they will not automatically be shut off and brought back to the main session, but they'll see a countdown for 60 seconds. And that's just a good way for the folks to finish up their final comments and then get ready to join the main room. And when you close all those rooms and it counts down to the last second, when their breakout rooms close, participants, again, do not have to do anything. All they do is just get automatically brought back to the main room. Okay, so I have just a few best practices and then we are going to open up for conversation and question, because that's, I really want to be able to speak to whatever issues you all are concerned about. But I've thought through just a few general best practices. And the first is to create a game plan with your co-facilitator or facilitators. So that is, when I say create a game plan, what I mean is that for every session, you and your co-facilitator or facilitators know exactly who's going to be leading what portions when, and who's going to be navigating the tech side of things when. So I just finished up facilitating faith and racial equity here in Virginia with 2 other facilitators. And what we decided is that I would be the primary tech person and that they would be the primary leaders of the given sessions. So what that looked like is every week we sat down together. We didn't sit down, we met over Zoom actually. And we would walk through the session and Mary Jo would say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, the opening prayer, this dialogue, this closing prayer, and Gail would do the 2 other portions. And then we talk through what are their technological needs. So for the second conversation portion, there's actually a video that needed to be shared. So I would make a note in my facilitator manual, be prepared to share this video or be prepared to start a breakout room. And so how you divide that work between facilitators is really up for you to decide. But what I recommend is that one person is not leading the conversation and doing the tech piece. So if there is a portion that needs to be an activity that needs to be broken into breakout rooms, you have one facilitator behind the scenes setting up the breakout rooms while the other facilitator is introducing that activity. So you're not having to talk, communicate, and do the tech logistics at the same time, but that role can flip and reverse as you see fit. The next thing is just to practice with a friend. This is, for many of us, a new world where we are learning a new skill with Zoom. And as with anything new, the more we practice, the more confident we will feel and the more capable we will be. So I encourage you to practice. And if you feel any anxiety, that practice will really help to rid you of that anxiety and build confidence that you really can facilitate in this platform. The third thing I recommend is closing all unused applications. And what I mean by that is some of you may know a person, or you might be that person who opens up your internet browser and you've got 15 tabs running. So you're looking at your email, you're looking at the news, you're looking at the weather, whatever else. The more applications you have open on your computer, the slower it's going to run. And so I recommend closing everything that you're not going to use for your JustFaith Ministry small group. So only keeping up the documents or videos and then the Zoom application as well. Finally, or not finally, second to last, open all videos and documents that you want to share via share screen ahead of time. So have those opened and minimized so that when you go to share screen, it will be right there for you to share and share it straight without having to go and open it and then go back to Zoom to try and share your screen. And then finally, give yourself grace. As I said with the first point, this is a new platform for many of us, and we are bound to make mistakes, and that is okay. You all have made an amazing commitment to facilitate one of our programs, and that is a gift to your small group. And so giving yourself grace to know that you're going to make a mistake, you will recover, the world will not end, the small group will still be meaningful. And as always, I'm here to help along the way. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will keep my PowerPoint open in case there's a slide that I need to refer to answer your questions. But I'm going to just invite you all to either send me a question in the chat or unmute yourself if you prefer and ask away.
Hi, I'm Greg from St. Edwards. On the generating breakout is in the room. You don't do that before the meeting.
Greg, will you say that one more time? You broke up halfway through and I couldn't hear it.
When you're generating the breakout rooms, will you generate those right before you're ready to break out, or do you do that before the meeting starts?
Great question, Greg. So to generate the breakout rooms, you have to have all of the participants in the call. So if I were to do generate breakout rooms and Alan's the only person who's joined the call, then I would only see Alan as an option for breaking into breakout rooms. But what you can do, Greg, is actually do the breakout rooms at the beginning once everyone has joined and have them prepared for that moment when you're ready to click open rooms. Okay. As you grow in your confidence, what I find myself doing is just waiting until the 2 minutes before I need to have a breakout room and going through the process real quickly because I'm confident that I can get it done in 20 seconds flat. But if you are feeling anxious about that and you want a little bit longer, go ahead and take a minute or two at the very beginning when your co-facilitator might be talking about something else, and you can go ahead and set that up so it's ready to roll.
Hi, Carl Malishki in Milwaukee. I put together, like you did today, a PowerPoint presentation using the Apple Mac software Keynote. It's the same thing. And I embed in one of my slides the music, song, or video. And I have trouble when I try to play that, the slide disappears from the sharing screen. People can hear the audio, but they can't see what's on my slide. And I don't know how to get around that.
So Carl, let me ask the question back to you to make sure the situation back to you to make sure I'm understanding. What you do to prepare for a session is create a PowerPoint where you input any information you'd want to share or include together, and that when you click a video link, folks can hear it through the share screen, but they cannot see it. Is that correct?
Yes, or an audio link. So okay. in your faith and racial reconciliation program, you have the song "Oh Freedom," and I take the link and I embed that into my slide. On the slide, I also have written text, the verses. And then I click on the link that's in the slide. The music starts playing, but that slide disappears visually from the participants.
Carl, what I'm going to do is write down your question because I have not personally tried to click on a link from a PowerPoint. I've opened videos and clips from an internet browser and shared them just fine. So I don't actually know what is going wrong there, but I'm going to test that out and see if I can problem solve, and then I'll get in touch with you directly. Is that all right?
Wonderful. Appreciate it.
Okay. And I'll take that moment to say, if you had told me a year ago that I would be the Zoom expert for the Just Faith Ministries staff, I would have laughed at you. And so would have everyone who knows me personally. So I want to use that little self-deprecating moment to say, I am learning and I have learned how to do this and how to be as competent as I can be. So we are all on this journey together, and wherever you find yourself today, there is a possibility for a lot of growth because I've personally been there. But I'll be in touch, Carl.
Thank you.
Yes, Maggie.
I have a question. I thought, you had that wonderful, you guys, Leela, how do you say your name, Leela?
It's Leela.
Leela, okay. It's wonderful. And she helped me and we got it down pat. And now you've changed. And so when I go to I looked at I'm in session 5 of Faith and Racial Healing, which, in case anybody hasn't done it yet, is much harder. Not harder, not this to do, just the info is harder to intake than the first one, than Faith and Racial Equity. But the new facilitators, I don't see the links anymore down in session 5 to the prayer. I want to put the prayer up. And so then I looked at the PowerPoint thing, and then there's the link, as someone was just saying, in the video, but I want to have it up on my screen I want to have it all in there, because I find it's better if I run the video a little bit and then back it up, because then if we're doing one of those long videos, the wheel doesn't go around for people when we're watching it.
So Maggie, I think what you're referring to is the fact that for Faith and Racial Equity and Faith and Racial Healing, we have updated the online accounts.
I know.
And we will be doing that for all of our programming and time. And so all of the handouts that you would possibly want to share via share screen are in the facilitator manual. So Maggie,
Right.
What I recommend is you download the facilitator manual, save it to your desktop, and then the documents that you would need to share for a given session will be in there. The video links are also embedded in that manual, so you can right click them, control click, and they will open up you can open them ahead of time. But we've also duplicated the video links in the facilitator account. So under session 5, you'll see all of the video links there as well.
Yeah, I found those and I downloaded it. I just wasn't sure how to, I've done all that.
Okay.
but so are people that are using that, I'm asking the other people on the thing, are you just going to that, just wheeling through that on the share screen, or do you get it all downloaded ahead of time? You go through the virtual menu yourself ahead of time and have those already out on your screen?
I think most folks are doing that ahead of time, where they have it on the right page. They've already scrolled through, so they're prepped and ready to go. With that being said, I'm sure there are folks who do it on the fly in the moment as well.
Okay, and another question about breakout rooms. I seem to have lost the link where you set the time for, how you can set the time ahead, and does it come up in I was looking for it on the PowerPoints and I didn't see it.
Yes, that was not on the PowerPoint, but you're exactly right. When you are setting up an initial breakout room, when you have the option to select how many different rooms you want, there is a drop-down menu that has, and I'm going to write this down right now to send in my follow-up email to you all. I'll send an image that shows this. Okay. There's a drop-down function where you can set the time for the breakout rooms. So instead of forcing them closed at the end, you can say 15 minutes or go ahead and schedule that ahead of time so they'll automatically close. So I'll write that down right now and include an image in that follow-up email.
Thank you.
And I saw, Lourdes, before you ask your question, I saw Jackson a message to me in the chat about downloading the instructions from today. So if you missed it at the beginning, I will send a PDF version of the slides I created in a follow-up email, as well as this recording of my presentation. So you can go back, view it, share it with whoever, and follow along with the slides. And if there's anything that you are still confused by, you can reach out to me directly. Lourdes, did you have a question?
Yes, hi everyone. I was just wondering, kind of piggybacking on Carl's question, if you wanted to share like a PDF with the lyrics, let's say to a song and the audio, can you share both at the same time?
You can only share one screen at a time. So if you want to share the lyrics to a song and the song, what I'd recommend is sending those lyrics out ahead of time to folks or copying and pasting them into the chat of Zoom. So another way to get the participants those lyrics and then actually sharing through share screen the video. But it limits you to one application at a time, unfortunately.
So that might explain why my
Right.
screen disappears, because I have the audio embedded into the particular slide that has the lyrics on it.
And that could be exactly, Carl, you're exactly right. It could be that because it's opening the video separately, it's not able to show both.
Uh,
I'm not confident. I mean, I'm not certain about that, but that seems like that could be
Makes
a
sense.
reason for why it's messing up. Yes, Mary.
Leela, my desktop computer does not have a camera. Can all of this be done with my iPad?
Yes, it can. It is definitely harder to navigate an iPad for things like sharing a screen in particular or breakout rooms. It can just be a little more challenging, but people are facilitating with iPads successfully. One thing to consider, Mary, is you could actually use to log onto Zoom with your computer and with your iPad, and use your iPad for video and audio. Turn off your audio and video on your computer and just use that to share a screen or to start a breakout room if that works for you to have two screens that you're working on. But with that being said, that might just add complication and stress than actually alleviate any issues.
That might take a second training session.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions coming up? One thing I'll add is and someone just brought this up to me just the other day, was that they're facilitating a small group, and on week one, maybe they realized they had a younger person in the group who was really tech savvy, who did not want to be a facilitator, but was really excited about the program. And the facilitators were having a really hard time with technology. And so what they did is they approached this woman and asked if she would be willing to support them with the tech side of things. And she very quickly agreed, said yes, that she would be happy to just be prepared to share the screen, do the breakout rooms, and manage those two main things. And so I'd encourage you to consider in your small groups what resources are available to you as far as participants go. And if you have someone who's a tech whiz who would be happy to take on just the little bit of work to do those two things, feel free to ask, and you never know what you'll find. But I just thought that was worth mentioning as you start your groups.
Leela, you have to assign that person as a co-host then?
Exactly, Ken, you would. So anyone that you want to be able to have the same functions as a host, like share screen, share video, breakout rooms, be able to mute other people, they need to be made a co-host. Yes, Greg.
Do you have any thoughts on group size? The other Greg on the call and I, we're going to be launching our church's Just Faith program next week. So what's a good group size?
Great question. Prior to being virtual, when we had in-person small groups, our recommendation was 8 to 15 for in-person. For virtual, I strongly encourage groups to stay a little smaller than that, between 8 to 12. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that in our virtual adaptations of our in-person programs, we've encouraged 2-hour long programs. So instead of meeting for what's typically a 2.5 hour long session, most virtual groups are meeting for 2 hours. In that time reduction comes a shortening of conversation time and dialogue time. And so if you're dividing 40 minutes of sharing between 11 people versus 15, that's a significantly different amount of time each person can share. So that's the main reason. And then having a smaller group, it just enables a greater sense of community and connection, because you see, even just in the little ways that when you're in the display function and everyone's a tiny tile, that if there are 12 faces versus 15, people's faces are just a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger with the smaller groups. So again, we recommend 8 to 12 for virtual. There are groups who exceed that, and there are groups that are 3 people who are really committed and just are going to do it with 3 people. So we trust you all to figure out what's most appropriate for your group.
I think one aspect that makes it challenging, Greg, and then having a larger number, I have 8 in my group, including myself. We all knew each other before we started, but it works out real fine. But I've got folks that are using a telephone and an iPad, and I had to download the participant packet, print it out, and mail it to those folks because they don't have the capacity to access those materials and print them out. Or, try doing a 2-hour session on a telephone.
Right.
So you have to kind of slow things down. And as Leah said, we're doing 2 hours. That's the most folks can tolerate, in my experience.
Right.
It works out real well with 8 people then.
Well, where we set up, Greg's going to do a group of 9, and I've got, a group of 8 plus himself, and I've got a group of 8. So I'm doing Wednesdays, he's doing Thursdays.
That sounds perfect. And another thing, just for the 2 Gregs to keep in mind, that a lot of churches and communities will have multiple small groups running at the same time, like yours are. And there are ways to consider how to connect these people. So for example, possibly doing an immersion experience together, or when you invite a guest speaker, doing the guest speaker portion all together. So there can be creative ways to connect various small groups who are doing the same program in a way that's meaningful and builds community in the larger church or parish, but still allows for that attention that Carl's talking about, and just the community that can be built in that with those smaller numbers. Well, it is wonderful to be here with you all. And again, I know many of your names and have exchanged emails and calls, so it's great to see some of your faces for the first time. And as I have said multiple times, I will be sending you all a follow-up email, possibly as soon as tomorrow, if at the latest Monday, depending on how quickly I can edit this video. And I'll give you the slides, the video, and then you'll have access to my email and phone number. So if you have any questions that come up, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'll be happy to support in any way I can. And if I can't, I'll find someone who can help you.